The May 10th, 2021 regular Wasilla City Council meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, Council, please put away cell phones. If you have personal business to attend to during the meeting, please move for a recess. Also, when speaking, please remember to state your name for those streaming the meeting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Rausa.
I'm here.
Councilmember Burney.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Velock.
Here.
Councilmember Harvey.
Here.
You do have a quorum, Madam Mayor. We have Councilmembers Rausa, Burney, Velock, and Harvey participating telephonically. Councilmembers Johnson and Brown are with us in person.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jessica, would you lead us? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item for business is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes? Hearing none, the agenda will stand as presented. Next on the agenda is special orders of the day. There are two proclamations which I will read. City of Wasilla Proclamation recognizing Arbor Day. Whereas April 30th, 2021 has been designated National Arbor Day by the Arbor Day Foundation, and whereas Arbor Day, a special day set aside for the planting of trees, is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas due to ground conditions in Alaska, the state of Alaska and City of Wasilla designate the third Monday in May as Arbor Day annually. And whereas May 17th, 2021 has been designated as Arbor Day in Alaska. And whereas the City of Wasilla has earned national recognition as a 2021 Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters, and whereas as a result of Wasilla's commitment to effective urban forest management, our community joins more than 3,400 Tree City USAs, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore I, Glenda D, Ledford, Mayor of the City of Wasilla, do hereby proclaim May 17th, 2021 as Arbor Day in the City of Wasilla, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support the efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Dated this 10th day of May, 2021. City of Wasilla Proclamation honoring Memorial Day. Whereas Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, was born from the Civil War and the desire to honor the fallen heroes who died in service to the nation. And whereas we are grateful for the sacrifices made by those who believed so deeply in what the United States of America could be, they were willing to give their lives to protect its promise. And whereas on Memorial Day, we remember and mourn the men and women who have answered the call of duty, selflessly sacrificing to serve our country and protect the rights of all Americans. And whereas Alaska joins the rest of our nation in recognizing our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen who have valiantly defended American values throughout our country's history and sacrificed their lives so that we may live free. And whereas these remarkable individuals inspire our country with their courage, compassion, and dedication. And whereas we remember all who have given their lives in defense of freedom, and we promise to honor their memory, never taking our freedoms for granted. And whereas we owe all of those who sacrifice in our name a tremendous debt, including families of the fallen, each sacrificing for freedom's cause. And whereas the citizens of Wasilla and the Mat-Su will never forget the valor of the women and men who defended freedom, justice, and peace every day. Now therefore I, Glenda D, Ledford, Mayor of the City of Wasilla, do hereby proclaim May 31st, 2021 as Memorial Day in Wasilla, and ask all to join me in recognizing our fallen heroes and honoring their faithful service to our state and our nation. Dated this 10th day of May, 2021. Okay, I've lost my paper. Next on the agenda is Commission and Agencies reports. Wasilla High School.
So the majority of our processes lately have been, we've changed our logo. So our logo used to be a Lakota Sioux native, and it is now a depiction of Chief Wasilla, and it will replace all of the warrior head logos that we currently have. We have a new W logo that will be used for sports. Graduation is coming up. It's on May 20th. The last day for seniors is on May 13th, which the walk for seniors is going to be at 2:05 p.m. that day. Senior Awards Night is going to be May 12th. There's one at 9 a.m. and one at 6 p.m. We are currently in the midst of spring sports. We are very thankful for them. We have soccer, softball, track, wrestling, and baseball. And regions for all spring sports are coming up very quickly.
Okay. Could you please state your name for the record?
Emily Racenet.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody have any questions for her? Thank you, ma'am. Oh, next is Archie.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Planning Commission, their next meeting is May 25th. There's 2 agenda items. Conditional use permit for a 3-story office building at the east end of Railroad Ave. And then secondly, we've got some draft regulations amending the landscape code for industrial zone property.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Giddings?
Madam Mayor, yes. I would like to see the draft the draft proposal for landscaping, realizing that it'll probably be on a building right next to my house.
That's not industrial zoned.
That's not?
No,
Okay.
it's commercially zoned.
I would still like to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Any further questions? Hearing none, next on the agenda is a report from MEA on Fishhook to Pittman power improvements.
Hello, Mayor. Thank you for having me and council members, staff. It's great to be here again. My name is Julie Esty, for the record. I'm with Matanuska Electric Association. And with me, I have Will Klatt. He's in the back. Will's our project manager for this project. Now, some of you who've been around for a while have been part of the conversation about MEA and transmission lines. And so I will bridge those 2 conversations. About a decade ago, we started a conversation with the city around a transmission line that would connect a few of our substations. And then as I go through the PowerPoint presentation, I will show you that and explain how this is handling some of that work and also moving it forward. So let's just get right into it, and I can address that. So we're growing, and I know you guys know it because you're dealing with it too. And as a certificated monopoly, we have a duty to serve whatever growth happens in this area and make sure that our power is reliable and cost effective. And so as the city grows, as others grow, we need to meet that need. And so this is a recent analysis we did of where that growth is happening. So these are new services between 2015 and 2020. And you can see right where Wasilla is a big old red. But we also have a lot of growth up in the upper district, kind of between Wasilla and Palmer. That's right where Wasilla Fishhook comes together with Palmer Fishhook, and then also just north of Wasilla in the Meadow Lakes area. And then, of course, KGB, you'll see. As we looked at our map of where our infrastructure was, is there a pointer on here? At the top. Oh, right here. La, la. Okay. So the yellow lines are the transmission lines, and the black circles are our substations. And I'll go into why those are all important soon. But you can see the area that we were studying with all the growth is in the green, and all of our infrastructure is right below it. So we need something to meet these needs up in this area. Now, just to bring you back to the previous project that we've been talking to you guys about, the Wasilla transmission line that we talked to this group about before connected these dots right here. This dot, hospital substation, and these dots right along here. And you can see that made a nice looping. So what we don't want is to have a substation out on its own so that if you lose power to that substation, you can't feed the people that are being fed by that substation. So this was going to create additional reliability along this corridor. We're still in the process of acquiring right-of-way on that. As a small, brief history lesson for those, we did agree on a routing for that. That took it off the Parks Highway per the Council and the Planning Commission's desires. And it's been locked up in right-of-way ever since, which basically means we're working with landowners. And we've acquired a good portion of the right-of-way, but there's some holdouts. And they're asking for funding that just can't be justified for our members. And so we're still working through the process with our members. In the meantime, as I said, that was about a decade that we started that process. In the meantime, a lot of the growth was happening up here. So what we've done is the Herning substation, which is what feeds downtown Wasilla. This is right behind like the LIO, right there. That has received a big upgrade. It's just being completed now. So in the past, what would happen is anywhere between this, which is right by the hospital, up through here, which is the Shaw substation on Bogart and Selden, down here, even down through our other substations on KGB. If anything happened along this line, Wasilla lost power. So what we've done is both in the Shaw substation and now in Herning is we've done what we call sectionalize, which is we've broken it down into sections so that if anything happens here, we can block it here and feed it from another direction so it doesn't impact the entire system. So we've increase the reliability to Wasilla by doing some upgrades at not only the Shaw and Herning substation, but also Theodore down here, right down your kind of on KGB and Vine, just down from there. So we've been able to handle some of those reliability concerns. Also in the meantime, this area is grown exponentially and we need to handle this. If we continued on the Wasilla transmission line, as I said, it's still going, but just on a slower route now with right-of-way, we would still need to address the area to the north. But if we address the area to the north, a lot of the reliability issues that we were trying to solve with that initial route will be solved. So we're prioritizing now this transmission line north from O'Neill Tap, and this runs kind of near the Farm Loop area of Palmer, to, again, this is right between Wasilla Fishhook and Palmer Fishhook, and then down to the Meadow Lakes area. The McRae substation is right off of Pittman, across the highway. So, also from our previous experience with transmission lines, we have learned to involve the community early. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that, but part of that is this discussion we're having with you tonight. So, let's talk about some of the language I'm using. So, all of these components are needed. You generate power at press the wrong button. At a power plant, we have ours at the Eklutna Generation Station, just near Eklutna. They then go to transmission lines. That's like the superhighways, big amounts of power, hop on those transmission lines, but there's too high a voltage to be able to serve homes and businesses. So then we have to go to a substation and bring it down with a transformer. It gets stepped down to a voltage level that can be distributed to homes and businesses. And then before it can actually go to your home, it actually gets stepped down again, either with those lovely green boxes that everybody loves, or a pull top transformer right here. And then it goes down to a voltage that we can all use and plug all of our devices in that we depend on it. And we need each of those components to produce and bring power to you. Without those components, we can't make the system work. So right now we're looking at the transmission lines and the substations. So again, some of the other projects that we've done to solve the load growth issues in Wasilla is the Theodore substation down KGB and Herning substation off Denali Street. The Theodore substation was completed last year. Herning is in the process of being completed now. So the things we have a lot of things to consider when trying to figure out where to put these transmission lines. Nobody says, as they're planning their city or their community, oh, and we're going to put the transmission lines here and they're going to be beautiful. But we know that we have to have them to serve you. So how do we choose where to put them so that they have the least negative impact and the most positive impact for our members? One is trying to use the existing rights of way. And so a lot of times those are along railroads, highways, utility corridors, places that have already been cleared, are already set aside for infrastructure that has the least impact on the land use. We also want them parallel to property lines, section lines. We don't like crossing things, natural, cultural features. We try to minimize the effect on private property owners and maximize the use of existing access points. We also have to have it be technically feasible. So that's critical. Our engineers get upset if we try to do things that aren't possible in the land of physics. And then we also need to make sure that the transmission line can connect into a substation. And of course, cost. Cost is always a factor because we're a co-op, we're not for profit, so anything that escalates costs needs to get paid by all of us through our energy charge. That's the only revenue source that we have as an electric cooperative. So what kind of transmission lines are we talking? We're talking the kind that you see here, and you can see some good examples of these kinds of transmission line. This is what runs down the Palmer-Wasilla Highway. This is what runs across the Safeway parking lot. Most people say there's no transmission line that runs across the Safeway parking lot, but there is. And so it's not the very large ones, and I have pictures later on in the presentation. But we're talking low-level transmission lines compared to what you'll see, say, in the lower 48. And then our substations, again, us at the power company sometimes think they're beautiful, but most people don't. So we try to find places that, I'll actually get to that right here, for substation criteria. We want to locate them right near where the load is growing. So putting them in a location too far away from the load creates issues with reliability and power quality. We need a minimum of 2 acres for each substation site. Ideally, they're larger. And look for undeveloped land, whether it's vacant, industrial, commercial. And we need them near a road and avoiding floodplains. Don't want electricity and water to mix. So right now, we're going through the process of figuring out where these need to go. We've determined they have to go somewhere. So how can we decide where the best routing location is? So we did an initial study initiation, and then we've been doing some preliminary siting and routing work, and now we're here comparing the different alternatives. I'll show you those in a second. And our goal is to have a final siting and routing by the fall. So again, we learned a lot from our Wasilla transmission line and getting the community involved early. So we formed a focus group, more like a working group of folks from the different community councils, from the different jurisdictions. We've got somebody here from the city of Wasilla, Robert Walden. We've got folks from the different tribes, mental health trust, folks who are big landowners in the area, the borough, and Jessica from the Wasilla Chamber of Commerce. So it's a good, diverse group. Oh, we also have one of the big ones is the Alaska Airmen's Association. There are a lot of both formal and informal runways in this area. So we want to make sure we're sensitive to that. So we've been having focus group meetings where they've been looking at the different land areas, talking to us about their concerns, their ideas, ground truthing what our engineers are finding from their mapping. And we also have a public open house, and that's happening next week on the 19th. It's happening at the Government Peak Recreation area up at that facility there. So we invite everybody to join us. It's just a chance for you to wander around, ask a lot of questions, and most importantly, give your feedback. So there'll be people there saying, oh, don't go here, go here. If I would rather it go along this corridor than this corridor. We want to hear from as many people as we can on that. And then we've been meeting with individual landowners as well. So one of the first things we did is said, okay, how important are these constraints that we have? We looked at all of the different possible things like residential buildings, BLM lands, cultural, wetlands, we've got trails, and we had the working group rate how sensitive these were. So you can see airport, airstrip, very high, avoid at all costs. Farther away from the airstrip is still high. Residential buildings, let's avoid those. So we had people say, help us rank what's important to this community as far as what is high priority to avoid. And from that, we received this map. So you can see there's red is no good, no bueno, and orange and yellow are moderate, and blue is more ideal for a location. So this is just basically what gets us started. And from this, we then devise the routes. And you can see a lot of the routes go along existing corridors and roads. So these are current route options based on those criteria and the sensitivity levels and all of the different cultural resources, airports, airstrips, subdivisions, all of those kinds of things that we saw in this sensitivity analysis. So now we're looking at all of these different segments and saying, okay, community, help us narrow these down. And that's the purpose of the open house as well as the working group. There's also opportunities to provide feedback in a lot of other ways. So again, that open house is Wednesday, May 19th from 6 to 8:30. You can also get information, give us your feedback on our website or email us. You can call us. There's lots of ways. But just to go back here, you can see the city of Wasilla is outlined in that kind of peachy salmon color there. So some of the routing options do touch the city of Wasilla, but regardless, this project impacts the city of Wasilla. It supports growth in this area. It supports economic development in this area. And so we want to make sure that you all are aware of what's going on, that you all provide your feedback. Again, we've got Robert helping us from the city on the working group, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you. We'll be talking more in detail to the Planning Commission about this as we get further down in the process. But we wanted to give you all a heads up on what was going on, allow you to ask questions, And I went through it really fast for as much information as in here, but I wanted to be respectful of time. So I'm happy to entertain questions.
Is there any questions for Ms. Esty?
Madam Mayor, this is Councilman Rosa. I
Yes.
have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Yeah, Rosa, I'm curious, are some, I've heard some concerns about safety close to these transmission lines. I'm not an electrical engineer or anything, but I know that down Connect Goose Bay Road, there's a transmission line out there. I guess it's close to Settlers Bay, and there's a big steel plate that was put up in an effort to block some type of radiation from the local area. And I'm just wondering if there's any kind of impact study or analysis done to determine possible health effects on residents in more densely populated areas, specifically within the city of Wasilla. I know we have a higher population density, a lot of people. Are there any studies, are there any response to a study using wire that has a higher level of shielding, or a different installation method, or a different method of burial that will protect possibly even a more dense population as we move into the future and become busier and busier and busier? Or is that something that's being looked at? That's pretty much my question.
Thanks, Councilmember Rausa. I'm glad you asked that question because it's one we get a lot. It's one of the biggest concerns that people have. And a lot of it is because there's some big, scary studies on the internet. All of those studies are done on transmission lines that are much higher voltage, and none have been conclusive that it causes any health effects, but it's something that we know is important to our members and that we want to be very sensitive to. So we do have information both at our open house and I think on our website. And well, you can clarify if just speak up if I get things wrong, because I might. So we have information about the levels of, it's called electromagnetic frequency, and it's a concern of anything really that transmits electricity. So there's something called a Gauss meter. It's like this little meter, and you can hold it up to things and find out how much it's actually, that's Gauss, it measures, I don't know what the plural of magnetic fields, thank you. And so you get different ratings for different things that are transporting electricity. And so we have done a study with MEA looking at our substations, standing under our transmission lines, 5 feet away from our transmission lines, and then in front of a microwave. And actually the microwave in our operations department was off the charts compared to what was on our transmission line. So what we find is that the way that our lives are right now, the transmission line level that we will install at the 115 kV is really similar to just general household noise. The appliances that you plug in, it's very similar to that level. And so if we ever did have a high reading, I am unsure, and maybe Will can fill in if there are mitigation efforts for that. But it is something that we are very sensitive to. There's a lot of information that we have on our website that's easier to see than I can describe. But it is something that I think gets more hype than we have seen cause for alarm on, which happens a lot, I guess, with the internet. But especially because we're talking a very low voltage. In fact, most of the transmission lines we put in are considered sub-transmission lines in most of the lower 48, just because it's small compared to some of those big monsters you see marching across.
Is there other questions?
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Councilman Brown, would you explain why running the lines above ground versus running underground? Why didn't you choose to go underground?
Yeah, another great question that we get asked a lot. A lot of it's cost. It's almost 8 to 10 times to go underground versus overhead. Another thing, especially with those big high voltage transmission line corridors, is reliability. They may not go out as often. or is impacted by trees, but when they go out, one, it's hard to find the fault, and then two, it's very hard to fix, especially in our winters with frozen ground. And so we find that with some of our underground lines that we've buried, there may not be as many outages, but the outages that there are long. And when you're talking about those big sections, high voltage lines that really are the feeders for all of our power, it's a reliability issue. And then I also, there's some interesting at our, I don't have it in this presentation, but at our open house, they're not without, they're not with, it's not completely, it's not, I can't really think of what I'm trying to say, but there's still a lot of infrastructure above ground, even with underground lines. So you still have these big cases. You've got some poles where the wires have to come up above ground. So for the value, for the money, considering that we have very few members to spread costs over compared to some of, like I know it's used in some really big cities like Atlanta or things like that, where there are lots of people to cover those costs. So for the value, the cost benefit analysis just isn't there. And plus with our cold temperatures, it's nerve-wracking to have that kind of level of infrastructure underground with our cold winters. But thanks for asking for that question. We get that a lot.
Okay, other questions?
You guys are going easy on me tonight. What's the problem?
Councilmember Rouse, I have one more question.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you if your transmission line plans, where's the main power generation? Is it still Eklutna? Are we looking at future power generation sites, and do these new transmission you're talking about support feed and power from new power generation opportunities elsewhere? And if so, what are those power generation opportunities that you're looking at?
Yeah, Councilmember Rouse, through the chair, thank you so much for the question. I think right now, yes, a significant amount of our power does come from the Eklutna Generation Station, which is just on the highway going into Anchorage across the Knik River there. That has what we need right now to serve our load. We also have a significant amount of power that comes from hydro resources, both down on the Kenai Peninsula as well as the Eklutna Hydro Project from Eklutna Lake. And we've also just entered into a new contract with Chugach Electric, which was mandated by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, for us to share generation resources. So we're not looking so much at what serves MEA's load, but we're looking now more on a region-wide basis and looking at our interconnected system from Fairbanks over to Delta down to Homer, and talking about how we can buy and sell power among each other in a more efficient way. We all have different kinds of power plants that suit our individual needs, but when they work together, we can burn a lot less fuel. And no matter where you are, where you fall, burning less fuel is good, whether it's from a cost or energy security or conservation. And so we've been working on that. So as far as new generation resources, there's a lot of big projects out there people are talking about, different mega projects that may drive that conversation. But right now we're looking more at buying and selling power among each other. And really our load is most efficiently met by Eklutna Generation Station and our hydro resources right now. So this transmission is not built to serve any sort of generation needs. It's really to meet the growing power need, the consumption of our members, and not generation.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up question. In the event that the Eklutna power station produce power for whatever reason, natural disaster or reason, what's the backup plan? How do you feed the grid?
Well, fortunately, we do have dual fuel, so that's one of the things. We're one of the only generation stations that can, if the gas system goes down, we can still produce power with diesel. And we have about a 3-day full power backup of diesel on our grid if we were at max load. So we're actually one of the few power plants that has that. But we do have feeds from lots of different communities, whether it's Fairbanks or Anchorage or even across the inlet, where we could feed power. I mean, if the transmission lines go down, that is an issue. But if the generating sources go down, there is extra redundant power located around Alaska that can feed us for as long as we need until we can get back up and running. But as one of the newer power plants, again, we're dual fuel. We've also been rated to I'm not going to even say it before I knock on wood, but a very high earthquake rating. And so we're really confident that we have built something that can provide us a lot of redundancy, but I think, there's always those occasions that you don't see, and that's why we want to build some of this redundancy and resiliency in this system so that if there is outages or an event, that we can build back up quickly and reroute power from different sources. And I think having our interconnected grid with lots of different locations helps that natural disaster be less of an issue, because you have generating resources in Fairbanks and across the inlet, and so ideally they would not all get impacted at once.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Esty.
Thank you, Mayor Ledford and Council.
Next on the agenda is public hearings. There's 2 ordinances scheduled for public hearing this evening. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the first ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's ordinance serial number 2108, amending Wasilla Municipal Code 5.20050, allocation of costs relating to the assessment of the cost of street improvements to the benefited properties.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 2108 is open. Anyone who would like to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council and staff. My name is Stuart Graham. I'm a proud resident of our great city of Wasilla. And I have one comment in regards to ordinance serial 2108. Not having the advantage of having heard a staff report yet on this, I do have one concern where I don't see the summary statement really accounts for it. The summary statement wants to say that projects that we have or that the council has approved for paving can go ahead without having to have the 1/3 contribution of the affected properties. And so that part was kind of taken care of. But when you look at the line 21, or lines 20 and 21, it says, the council may fund no more than 2/3 of the cost for street improvements. So my concern there is there something to cover that other third, and if there isn't, I would certainly like to hear a recommendation on line 21 to strike the words no more than 2/3 so that the city could pay for 100% of the cost if that's what the council and the administration decide to do. Thank you for your time.
Archie, do you want to speak to that? Oh, I'm sorry. I have to close public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Yeah, I don't see nobody. Okay, is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 21-08?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Brown, I move that we adopt ordinance serial number 2108.
Is there a second?
Second by Tim Johnson.
It's been moved by Councilmember Brown and seconded by Councilmember Johnson to adopt ordinance serial number 21-08. Is there any discussion?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Johnson. I would like to have our legal department weigh in on this. In the aviation industry, the word may has some unique meanings to it. Its intent is generally unclear and tends to be ambiguous. The meaning in my mind is that we could do it or not do it under some conditions or not other conditions or whatever, and this could lead to a situation where we do it in this case and we don't do it in this case according to the ordinance, and now we're in court suing because of an inadequate definition of when the particular ordinance would be used. Could you please comment on that?
And I think this is one of those situations where there is discretion, and or at least that's the attempt of the ordinance to build that discretion back in, because when we're looking at assessments and what types of costs the city will take on for one project or another, it really matters what's going on in real time. You know, how much money do we have? What's our budget? What's available? What this ordinance does is that gives the city the flexibility to respond to the existing revenue and financing sources available for the project. So it makes sure that they have the ability to assess, but does not require them to assess, and it makes sure they have the ability that they have limitations on how much they can subsidize or fund. With the understanding that there are other sources for that income. So it creates controls, but they're looser controls than those that were there before. But it is lawful and appropriate because it's not dealing with the rights you hand your citizens, and because those rights, which I think is exactly what you're thinking about, there's an equal protection component to those rights, but this doesn't affect that. This is more.
So, Ms. Wells, wouldn't it be better if we were to state specific conditions as to when the may would apply and when the may would not apply?
You know, I don't think so. And the reason why is sometimes flexibility, as much as we can get it, has a real value, right? Because being able to respond to real-time situations and financial availability and what's going on the ground regarding funding for a particular project, that's good to have that flexibility. So our code, sometimes we want rigidity, we want something firm that protects the citizens or protects the city, and sometimes we want flexibility. And when we're looking at financing in this realm, where we're looking both at assessment, so taxing really, right, or charging the citizens, and we're looking at the city's obligation, responsibility, or right to pay or not pay a certain amount, it's good to have flexibility so we can be responsive to the situation, because we have other provisions of the code that hold the city accountable for making the best financial decisions for the community and require certain steps be taken with this body as for oversight. So as long as we have those, they work together. I know,
So-
not a short answer, but I think ultimately the flexibility here is appropriate and valid.
So wouldn't it be better to say that the city council may, given the financial funds, elect to and then continue on? That would give you equal protection, which would mean that next year, if we don't have the money, somebody could come back at us and say, well, you did it last year too, and you paid 100%, but now you're asking me to do it, so this isn't equal protection.
Well, I think that's what the ordinance does, is it changes the shall to may.
Yes, but that doesn't give you equal
That gives them the
protection.
right to assess, but not the requirement that they do so. So it's really there to protect the benefiting property owners, right? And then you have, and then it eliminates really the information that it's eliminated doesn't go to that permissive versus mandatory language. So I think it does what you want it to do. I mean, it changes that required assessment to a permitted assessment.
Councilman Rousa here.
Yes, Mr. Rousa?
Hey, just to weigh in on this real quick, Mr. Johnson, the I think I understand what you're throwing down. I wanted to point out, though, that right now it says City Council shall assess 1/3 and may assess no more than 2/3, and so that's what we're currently operating under. I like that this takes the shall out of the 1/3 and changes that word to may. I think we're getting somewhere, although, I could see the equal protection thing that you're talking about. And, I would certainly like to see us move to a place where we're not looking to assess private residences to bring our city streets into, the 21st century. I think that, we're already requiring city residents to design, build anything that they do on their private land to the 9. And then when it comes to the city's job and the city's roads and the city's tasks and the things that the city is responsible for, we're very much falling behind and asking private residents to fund a lot of the improvements that should have already been made, arguably. So I definitely appreciate the comment, Mr. Johnson. I think this moves in the right direction. I just think that we need to keep that momentum going and look into the future to try to figure out how to fully address this topic.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance serial number 21-08.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Rosa, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Burney?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Vilock?
Yes.
Councilmember Harvey?
Yes.
The motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2108 passes unanimously with Rosa, Burney, Johnson, Brown, Vilock, and Harvey in support.
The next public hearing is on ordinance serial number 21-09. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's amending the fiscal year 2021 budget by appropriating $265,000 from the Water Fund fund balance for the Richmond Hills Booster Station Upgrade Project.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 2109 is open. Anyone who would like to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Nobody's coming forward. We'll close public hearing. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 21-09?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Brown, I move that we adopt serial number 21-09.
Is there a second?
Councilmember Johnson will second it.
The motion has been made by Councilman Brown and seconded by Councilmember Johnson to adopt ordinance serial number 21-09. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Burney, how do you vote on the adoption of ordinance 2109?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Vilock?
Yes.
Councilmember Harvey?
Yes.
And Councilmember Rosa?
Yes.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2109 passes unanimously with Rosa, Burney, Johnson, Brown, Vilock, and Harvey in support.
Okay, next on the agenda is persons to be heard. You have 3 minutes, so please come and state your name for the record. Eileen.
Eileen Falkenstein, representing Wasilla Area Seniors Incorporated. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. WASI is gearing up for their annual 5K fundraiser, which will be virtual and in person. The in-person event will take place on June 26th at Wasilla Area Seniors. campus, and it begins at 9 a.m., and the registration is $25. We are also having an online silent auction, which will begin on May 15th. You can access the auction through the Wasilla Area Seniors website. We are auctioning such items as a $100 gift card to Evangelos, railroad tickets from Anchorage to Denali, a zip line for 2 from Glacier View Adventures in Alaska, and various gift baskets and other gift certificates. Any donation would go to Miles for Meals. We are hoping to be able to fund 5,427 meals this year. We are also selling t-shirts, as I am wearing one. This is the 2XL. Obviously, it's a dress. We do have these are actually on special tonight. They normally go for $12, but for tonight only, I will sell them for $10. You can wear them as a dress, a nice shirt, whatever you like. That's it for me for this evening. If you have any questions, I will take them.
Okay. Any questions?
Mayor, Councilman Brown, not on this, but I want to thank the senior center for the gardening class they put on. It was excellent, very educational, and I'm already using some of the
Oh,
stuff.
you were there, weren't you?
Yes.
Yes, it was a great seminar. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council at this time? Stu?
I'll wait till audience comments.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Items for approval under our consent agenda this evening are the special meeting minutes of April 19th, 2021, and the regular meeting minutes of April 26th, 2021. We have 3 ordinances up for introduction. The public hearing, recommended public hearing date of May 24th, 2021. The first is ordinance serial number 2110, amending Wasilla Municipal Code Section 04090, propositions and questions relating to when an ordinance placing propositions or questions before the voters must be adopted before a regular election, amending subsection 420.020E with an absentee by mail voting to clarify the process for delivering absentee by mail ballot return envelopes, amending subsection 420.020C within write-in votes to establish when write-in votes are tallied, amending subsection 428.080A within counting absentee by mail ballots relating to the counting of absentee by mail ballots returned to an election official or via the drop box, and amending section 434.040 procedure for recount to establish that write-in votes are not invalidated by writing in the name of a candidate whose name is printed on the ballot in a recount. Second ordinance up for introduction is ordinance serial number 2111, amending the fiscal year 2021 budget by accepting and appropriating a $50,000 grant from the Mat-Su Trails and Parks Foundation for improvements to the Maureen McCombs Trail. Ordinance serial number 2112, amending the fiscal year 2021 budget by appropriating $72,200 from the general fund balance for City Hall remodel professional services. 2 resolutions up for approval. The first is resolution serial number 2107, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with MJ's Mobile Food Vending to provide concession services at the Menard Center, and for the city to receive $5,448 for concession services for 1 year. The second is resolution serial number 2108, authorizing the mayor to execute a 10-year agreement with the Greater Wasilla Chamber of Commerce for lease of the Wasilla Train Depot building. And we have 3 action memorandums up for approval. The first is 2121, awarding a 3-year contract to Little Diamond Cleaning in the amount of $41,400 for janitorial service at Matcom Dispatch. Second is 2123, awarding a 3-year contract to Valley Business Machines in the amount of $100,524 for a citywide copier printer lease program. And lastly, AM number 2124, contract award to CRW Engineering Group in the amount of $256,540 for the Richmond Hills Booster Station Upgrade Project Engineering Services.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved by Councilman Johnson.
Is there a second?
Councilman Brown, second.
It has been moved by Councilman Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Brown to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the
Madam
motion...
Mayor,
Yes.
could we just ask two just basic, simple questions here? Not necessarily discussing the ordinance. I understand that ordinance 21-12 will then be open for discussion at the following meeting. Is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
so if we have questions, then we can pose them at that particular time. The second question I have is pretty minor. On Resolution 2107, we're awarding a contract for a concession. Was that just an open bid, or was there only, what was the announcement process on that?
Councilmember Johnson, through the mayor. MJ's concessionaire has, it went out to RFP, I believe, a number of years ago, 3 years ago or so, and this is just a renewal on that concession agreement. This year, because of all the COVID closures, she had maintained paying her monthly fees, except for a couple of months, I believe, when we retracted some of her lease payments. But there was no activity in the building, so it was pretty much, it's a renewal, and I'm pleased that she's renewing, considering the stress of lack of events and things that were going on.
Thank you.
Okay, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. There's no unfinished business this evening. Madam Clerk, please read the next item of business.
Thank you. That's an update from administration on emergency response efforts related to COVID-19.
The update 16 was issued on April 30th, and it had to do with travel as far as people that have been vaccinated and people that have not been. So, is there any questions? Hearing none. Next on the agenda is communications. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the items under communications.
Thank you. You have 3 sets of commission meeting minutes. The first is Airport Advisory Commission. That's from April 22nd, 2021. Planning Commission meetings, April 27th, 2021. And lastly, Wasilla Air Show Advisory Committee minutes, April 20th, 2021.
Are there any questions from the council? Next on the agenda is audience comments. Is there anyone present who would like to address the City Council at this time? If so, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, members of the council and staff. My name is Stuart Graham. I'm a proud resident of the great city of Wasilla. I wanted to make a couple of comments regarding proclamations that were done today. You know, the first proclamation on Arbor Day for May the 17th. I know it's a little bit early to be planting trees just yet, even though some people are, but I hope when seedling sale comes out, which is usually about the end of May or so, that we encourage there to be a distribution point in Wasilla. For those that aren't familiar with the seedling sale, you can go buy for $1. You can buy essentially a 1-year-old tree, different types of trees that are Alaska native trees, and have those planted. You know, you plant them yourself, but I certainly hope we'll support that with as much vigor as we do the proclamation here for Arbor Day, which is a great thing. Also, for Memorial Day, the proclamation for Memorial Day, as a veteran who has lost family members in conflict while they were, in service of their country, to me it's important, that we distinguish between Memorial Day and Veterans Day and Armed Services Day. Memorial Day is strictly for those where we remember those persons that lost their life in the service of their country. We appreciate all veterans that have served and military members that are currently serving, but I just want to make sure that we spend a little bit of extra time remembering those that gave us the freedoms that we have now. While all veterans and service members contribute toward that, some gave their lives for things that they may not even have known about, because that's just the way things are in the military. You do what you're told, and you defend your country. So I'm glad to see that your proclamation for Memorial Day there, and I hope that we will all participate in the service at the wall, and if appropriate, in the little parade from the cemetery to the wall as well. And lastly, I don't know if any of you had a chance to go to the Alaska Airmen's show in Palmer this weekend. What a huge success. And when I talk about huge success, I'm talking probably 15, maybe even 20,000 people over 2 days. So certainly our Wings Over Wasilla Air Show isn't going to do that, but it certainly shows the appetite for general aviation, in the South Central region, and that people are willing to travel from Anchorage to come out to the valley to see things. So I'm looking forward to a great Wings Over Wasilla Air Show this year, and I can hardly wait for that to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right. We are moving on to Madam Clerk.
No, other than we'll see you all here for our next regular meeting, May 24th, 6 o'clock, here in Chambers.
Madam Attorney. Councilmember Johnson.
No comment.
Councilmember Beelock.
No comment.
Councilmember Harvey.
No comment.
Councilmember Rousa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight we heard from MEA on the transmission lines. We discussed some of the repaving that's going to be happening through the assessments, and there was a couple comments about burying lines, questions, and things. These are the things that are extremely popular topics amongst residents of the city, and I'd like to continue discussion on these things. Look to the future for opportunities where, as a council, we can begin to develop a strategy on how we're spending money, improving our public rights of way and our roads to accommodate the future and meet expectations that we don't yet see in front of us, expectations that will exist in the future as a result of growing demand on the city. So good discussion. I get real excited when we talk about those things because it's what I'm definitely interested in seeing develop for the better in the city of Wasilla. Look forward to future discussions. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown.
No comment.
Councilmember Burney.
Nothing further. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you all for your time tonight. And as Mr. Graham said, there will be a ceremony at the wall. And this year, instead of walking from the post office, they will walk from the wall up to the graveyard. And that starts about 10 o'clock. I did know and I forgot, but anyway. 11? Okay, that starts at 11 o'clock, and then the ceremony at the wall is at noon. So, they always have a very dignified ceremony anytime you go to the wall, and I would highly suggest that if you've never been, that you do go. We have a wall that is, in my opinion, very exceptional, to where the people that we honor that has given so much for us, and they continue to give others. So anyway, I have nothing else. So with that, There's no executive session this evening, and with no further business at hand, the meeting is adjourned at 7:04.